I don't usually eavesdrop on other people's conversations, and I have no idea what made me overhear this one. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was working in the basement on the hot water heater when I heard the phone ring. I didn't know what my wife Janet was doing at the time, and since the basement phone was nearby, I picked up the receiver before I could say anything. I heard my wife's voice. "On the second floor, Gary, you shouldn't have called here." John answered the phone. I would have just told him it was work-related. "Don't be so jumpy. I just wanted to let you know everything's ready for tomorrow. We'll be at the Desa Motel in room 117. Get there at 1 sharp. I'll take a bottle of chilled wine and some fresh strawberries. Don't forget to wear that black silk lingerie you were talking about." "Okay, just so no one sees us leaving work or coming back together. You seem a little nervous. Do you have any doubts about that?" No, I'm fine. I'm just a little scared. I've never done anything like this before, and it's only natural to be nervous. I'm not going to change my mind. It's going to be fine. I promise. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 sharp. I hung up like they did and sat like that for about 10 minutes, going over the whole conversation in my head. Why did I need to pick up that phone? Janet and I had grown up together. We got married the year after we graduated from high school. She was the only girl I'd ever had sex with, and I assumed she was the only one I'd ever had sex with. She was good, she had a good figure, and we had one son, Terry, who was in high school. We didn't have many friends, and our whole lives were spent together. I thought things were fine between us, but I guess I was wrong. I decided I didn't need to drain the hot water heater. There was some beer in the fridge in the basement, which helped ease my pain. I decided I had 3 options. I could confront her directly and cause a big emotional scene, which I didn't like. Or I could make a few hints or clues or make a few remarks that would make her believe I thought this might be a better option than the first one, but I figured it would just put things off until later, when I might not know about it. The third option was to just let her go through with it. I liked the last one, but with a slight modification. I decided that I would let it go as planned, but at the last minute, I would give her the option to back out. If she accepts, that's fine. If not, I'll have to attack. She could go 3 ways. Maybe if I'm lucky, she'll just change her mind and leave. I didn't think that would happen. The second was to take the last chance I would give her. It was a strong maybe. The last option she had was to go through with it. I hated to admit it, but that seemed the most likely. Now that I had that figured out, I was ready to plan my attack. It looked like I could make a game out of this. The more I thought about it, the more excited I got. After dinner, I started making serious plans. First, I had to gather information. Then I had to make a game plan. I had worked for a secure systems firm. For almost 20 years, they'd been after me to take an office in Huntsville, Alabama. But Janet didn't want to move for the last 10 years. She'd been working for an insurance company and doing well. But I never liked the guy she worked with, Gary Simmons. I know now that my suspicions were well-founded. Gary was married, and his wife seemed nice enough. I was upset that he wanted my wife. My moving to Alabama would be good for Terry because he was determined to go to Auburn. Resident tuition was much more affordable than non-resident. While we were eating dinner, I decided I would take the Huntsville position. I didn't care what the outcome was. The next day, I was still going to move. I'd be able to file my residency when I got there, and I'd have enough time for Terry to pay my tuition. I didn't see fit to say anything to Janet, but I decided to tell Terry after dinner. I'd let him know at work the next morning and I could hit the road as soon as I packed. Once that was settled in my head, the rest was easy. The plans were coming together nicely. Terry and I got on really well, and when I told him I was going to Alabama before the rest of the family, he thought it was a great idea. He agreed not to tell his mother about it. I didn't tell him anything about his mother's plans. The next day, I still didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I was confident that everything would work out. I told Janet I needed to go to Home Depot to get a few things and left. My first purchase was a cell phone with a 60 I got a minute business card so I could make a lot of calls without being tracked. I stopped at my favorite bar to see if I could get help from old high school friends who were less than respectable. It cost me $400 to buy 2 big bags of bad weed. My old high school buddy Benny told me I was taking a big risk buying it. I could be charged with dealing, which was exactly what I was counting on. One of the guys at the bar told me that. I didn't really know he was Wolf Fraser. He was a mean guy, and everybody stayed away from him if they could. He drove a Corvette, and I spotted him in the parking lot as I was getting out. I got a screwdriver out. I got Wolf's license plate in under a minute. That meant I knew where he worked, so I could call him in the morning. I went to the Desa Motel next. I stopped in the lobby, looked over the tourist attraction and restaurant counters, and took what I needed. The clerk gave me some information about the motel, including a map. I also got the phone numbers for housekeeping and room service. It was time for me to head home when I got there. Janet was watching TV. I told her I had some work to do at the office, and she said she was going to shower and go to bed early because she had a big day tomorrow. While Janet was in the shower, I opened her briefcase and pulled out her day planner. I spent the next half hour writing down names and phone numbers in the planner and phone notebook. Then came the most tedious part. I had to enter all the phone numbers in speed dial on the disposable phone. And on my own phone I had a few more numbers to look up in the phone book before I was done. It looked like I had everything ready. By the time I finally collapsed on the couch, it had been a rough night. I tried in vain to sleep, kept thinking about what Janet was going to do and wondering what I had done wrong that made her want to do it. By the time I fell asleep, I had convinced myself that it was my fault and that I had failed somewhere. Morning came and I had mixed feelings. I made coffee and set the table. Janet came downstairs and looked gorgeous. "You look good today. Is it a special day at the office?" "I always look good." "I know you do." We read the paper over our meals. The morning's conversation was less than normal, but not enough to comment on. I couldn't tell if she was nervous or worried. "I have a lot to do today, so I might be a little late for dinner." "That's okay," she said. "I'll make something that will last until you get back. Is there anything special you're craving? Or just tell me, and I'll make it." It was a pathetic attempt at small talk on our part. She knew what she was going to do. I knew what she was going to do, and we both walked on eggshells. I got to work early and made all the necessary arrangements for my transfer to Huntsville. After signing all the necessary paperwork and clearing off my desk, I went to the divorce attorney's office and got the forms and information I would need to file for divorce. If my last attempt didn't work out, I came home, packed up all my clothes and loaded them into my car. I also took the hard drive out of my computer and all the files and documents I thought I might need. I took the majority of our savings and investments, which I thought I might need. The banks were open by this time. I canceled my accounts and credit cards. I realized that I was acting prematurely, but I didn't have much faith in her changing her mind. I went to the flower store and ordered a dozen red roses that were to be delivered at exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes. The whole time I was looking at my watch, keeping an eye on the timing. It was about 1:30. I went to the motel and found a good parking spot where I couldn't be seen, but the room was clearly visible. I carefully laid everything out on the front seat. Finally, Gary showed up. He got out of the car with a grocery bag that I assumed contained strawberries, a bottle of wine, and who knows what else. I went straight to the room, then came back and filled a bucket of ice while he was getting the room ready. I started making calls. The first one was to Pizza Hut. I said, "Hello, I'd like a large pepperoni pizza delivered to room 117 of the Desa Motel. I may be taking a shower, so make sure the guy knocks loudly and for a long time so I can hear him." He said 20 minutes was fine, thank you. Then there was a call to Papa John's, followed by Domino's and Godfather's. I ordered egg rolls and sweet and sour pork from Golden Dragon. I figured half of them would call back to check on the order, but that was okay because the effect would be the same. Janet hadn't got there yet, so I made another call to the cleaning service. I asked them to bring some towels and another ice bucket. I thought it would take them about 15 minutes to get there. My wife arrived at last. She parked her car at the back of the building so that it wouldn't be too conspicuous. She got out of the car holding a small overnight bag. I saw her move about 20 feet away from the door with a small overnight bag. I called her. "Hey, sweetie, it's just me. John, something's wrong with you. You don't usually call me at work in the middle of the day. I was thinking about you and just wanted to call and tell you. I love you, John. That's sweet. I love you too. Okay, I'll let you get back to work. I'll see you later. Bye." Janet hung up the phone, turned and walked into the motel room. This was her last chance, and she had made her decision. Tears came to my eyes as I picked up my phone and called the local TV station again. "Is this WWTT TV? I've heard something strange is going on at the Desa Mot. If you have a truck nearby, you might want to swing by and check it out. No, I don't know what it is, but the cops are on their way." "Thanks." I walked over to Gary's car. Luckily, he'd parked in a spot where I wouldn't be spotted when I replaced his license plate with the one on Wolfie's Corvette. On the way out, I called Janet's office. I had an hour-long appointment with Janet Martin, but I have to reschedule. "Could you ask her to call me as soon as possible? Your husband asked me to call you. He's having car trouble and needs you to pick him up. He's at the Dessa Motel room 117. You can call his cell phone or just call the room. The number is 961-7700 extension 17. No, I don't know why he hasn't called you. Apparently he's seeing a client. A very pretty client. Bye. I went to Acme Welding, where I asked Wolfie's boss to tell him. I saw a white Honda in the Dessa Motel parking lot with Wolfie's license plate. I called the police because I thought something was wrong. I just asked them to check it out. I gave them Wolfie's license plate number. The first pizza delivery guy walked into the room. It looked like they had an argument, but Gary paid him and he left. The 12th call was to Janet's mother. Hi, Mom. It's John. I don't have much. Janet is in a motel room having sex with a man she works with. Please call her and ask her to reconsider what she's doing. I can't talk about this right now. You have her cell phone number. If you can't find her there, try calling the motel. It's extension 117. I'm sorry, but I have to go. Please call now. Bye-bye. 2 more pizza delivery men entered the room. At the same time, the maid brought more towels. There was another heated discussion at the door, but after, a few minutes later, everyone left. The next call was to the motel. This is Mr. Simmons in 117. The sink in the bathroom is leaking at the bottom of the faucet, and the water on the floor is starting to get on the carpet. Can you send someone over right away? Thank you. The big Harley roared into the parking lot, pulling alongside a string of cars. Wolfie stopped right behind Gary's car, but before he could do anything, a police car pulled up. The biker and the cop were arguing heatedly when I made my next. I got a call from Mr. Granger. He said he was John Martin, and that my wife Janet works for him. I said I was glad she's a good worker. He then told me she was at the Dessa Motel in room 117 with Gary Simmons, who also works for him. He said they were having sex there as we spoke. I said I was sure they were, and that he has a company policy against that sort of thing. He said he has their cell phone numbers and could call them to confirm or deny it. If he can't get through, he said to call the motel on 1 extension. I've decided that my wife shouldn't work for your company, Mr. Granger. If it's a violation of policy, I'd appreciate it if you'd let her go. Maybe Mr. Simmons should be let go too. No, I'm sorry, I had to warn you. Thanks for your time. Bye. There was a bellboy from the Oriental restaurant at the motel door. The policeman was walking to the room, and Wolfie waved his arms and shouted as he walked beside him. I went to room 15. It was Janet's sister. Hello, Nancy. How are you doing? I'm in a spot of bother at the moment. Janet's in a motel room having sex with a guy she works with, and I'm on my way home to get my Ruger. I'm going to go back and shoot them both, but I don't want the police or reporters to find Janet with no clothes on. Could you give Janet a call and tell her to get dressed before I get back? She's in room 17 at the back of the motel. If you can't reach her on her cell, just call the room. I've moved her car to the back of the motel, so she might not be able to drive. You know, you might want to just drive over there and pick her up. If you're there before me, you might want to take her home. No, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. Thanks for your help. Call me as soon as you can, okay? The traffic at the room door was pretty intense. The maintenance guy just came in to fix the sink. The delivery guy was trying to get money while Wolfie and the cop were talking to Gary. The florist was at the door trying to deliver roses, but he wasn't having much luck. It was time for me to go. I wrapped up my work here and left. I passed the TV crew on my way out. I had 2 bags of grass in my car, and I wasn't sure what to do with them. I was going to put them in Gary's car, but I changed my mind on the way home. I threw the cell phone and the weed into the river. I lingered outside the house just long enough to say goodbye to Terry. I told him I'd keep in touch and not to give his mother any trouble for the next couple days. I'd give anything to know what had gone down. In the motel room, I made one last call. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I tried it just in case. Hello, Gary Simmons. It's John Martin. I just wanted you to know that if you lay a finger on my wife, I will rip your balls off and shove them down your throat. Do you understand? Slurred answer. Yes, I understand. I hung up the phone and got on the highway about 8 hours later. My cell phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Janet. Hey John, where are you? I'm on I-81. Just outside Knoxville. John, what's going on? We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Janet. Please, John, talk to me. Janet, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Give me straight answers to all 3 questions, and then we can talk. Okay? What did I say to you when I called your cell phone today? You said, I love you. What did you do after you hung up the phone? There was a short pause. I went into the motel room. Why did you go into the motel room? There was no answer. Janet, answer me. What were you doing in the motel room? There was another pause. John, I don't want to answer that. Goodbye, Janet. I hung up the phone and turned it off. I wouldn't need it for the rest of the trip since the company was covering all the moving expenses. I got myself a pretty nice motel room and had a nice dinner. I needed to settle in quickly, so I spent the next 2 days looking for an apartment. It was easy to find something suitable and reasonable because I'm not too picky. I also got a new phone service. I also provided my new mailing address. I changed the name on my car and got a new driver's license. I registered to vote and then filled out a declaration of residency. I sent out all the paperwork to start the divorce. Everything went pretty smoothly, and soon I was ready to start my new job. I called Terry and gave him my new number. I asked him not to give it to his mother, but told him I would understand if she pressured him. He didn't think it would be a problem. He said she had lost her job and was very depressed. Terry was my main point of contact with the old house. A few weeks later, he told me that Janet had received the divorce papers from her lawyer and signed them and sent them back the same day. She hadn't even realized she'd read them. She stopped wearing makeup and started selling her clothes and jewelry. She had a yard sale every other week and sold everything that wasn't nailed down. I gave my attorney the details. I gave her power of attorney so she could sell the house whenever she wanted. I didn't want anything from the sale. She got a job at a bakery that was close to the house shortly before Terry graduated from high school. Janet put the house on the market and priced it so low that she sold it almost immediately. The sale was contingent on her and Terry staying in the house until Terry graduated from high school. The buyers readily agreed. Janet found an apartment within walking distance of the bakery. She got a small apartment on the second floor and left all the furniture she didn't need in the house. She gave Terry a car to take her to college. Terry helped her move in and left for Auburn. By this time, she had gotten rid of almost everything in the old house. Terry said the apartment looked like a nun's room in a convent. His mother never denied him anything, but she was depriving herself of everything. I could tell he was worried about her. The 4 years flew by quickly. It was about an hour's drive from my house to Auburn, and I hardly saw my son. He was busy with school and his friends, and I was spending too much time at work. Janet had the management company send me a check after the house was sold. It was for the full amount she left, and I cashed the money and put it in a folder I set aside for her. I bought a small house and spent most of my time making repairs and improvements. I didn't date or socialize with anyone. I just wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in getting close to anyone. Graduation day came around. I came, and I went to watch my son receive his diploma. We took our seats for the ceremony, and Janet took the seat next to me. I was glad to see her, even after we parted ways. She looked good but tired. She was a little older, and because of her lack of makeup and grooming, she seemed a little sad. We smiled at each other and said hello. They had just started handing out sheepskins, so there was no time for small talk. I don't think either of us knew what to say. It was over too quickly. The awkwardness of the moment was interrupted. Terry was really excited about getting his degree and was chatting away at a mile a minute. It was great to watch him enjoy his moment of glory. A few of his friends came up and introduced themselves, and then the whole company went to Gulf Shores to celebrate. Janet and I were left alone. How did you get here? I tried to break the ice by bus. I've got a round-trip ticket, and I've got to be back at the station by 6. Could you give me a ride? No problem. When I took a week's vacation, but I can't stay here. I think I'll come. I'm back tonight, and I'll be painting my apartment for the rest of the week. It'll be fun. What's my alternative? She laughed. You could stay at my place for a few days. I could even drive you home from there if you want. It's better than the bus. Anything is better than the bus. Although I don't think going to your place would be a good idea. It would be too hard for both of us. We never talked. I got angry then and cut you off. I didn't give you a chance to explain anything. For the past few years, I felt bad about it. Do you want me to? I'm going to tell you what happened. I think it's too late for us to salvage our lives. What can I tell you now to make it right? You didn't listen then, so why are you listening now? I can't answer that. Even if we can't talk, I'll still enjoy your company for a few days. I just wanted to check if you could spare a few days. I took a week's vacation too. Do you have any luggage? Just what I'm wearing. I wasn't planning on spending the night. We'll stop at Walmart. I'll buy you a couple of changes of clothes and you'll be all set. It's a 4-hour drive. It's about an hour's drive, and I'd really like some company. I don't see it as a good thing. but I'll give it a try. If you do anything to upset me, I promise I'll leave without a second thought. My car is over there. We were silent for the first few miles, but then we got off near Birmingham. I bought her some underwear, pants, and a few tops. I also talked her into wearing sneakers. But she wasn't keen on buying makeup. I didn't push the issue, just gave her a little nudge. A little further down the road, we had dinner at the Cracker Barrel, which she always liked to eat at. We were moving up I-65 at a good speed when it opened up, so I looked at her and asked what kind of sex we were talking about. The answer to your last question was to have sex, but I couldn't say it when you asked. I don't know why I didn't say it. I was too embarrassed, or I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. After you hung up on me, I realized that you already knew everything. It was stupid of me to deny it. I tried to call you back, but you'd turned your cell phone off. That's when I realized my life was over. You'd broken my heart. I know that, and I'm not sure how to fix it. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to fix it, but I couldn't come up with anything. After a few years, I decided there was nothing I could do to make things better. She seemed to be doing just fine on her own. If you knew what was going on, why didn't you stop it? I couldn't. You were the only one who could have done it. You could have said something. If you knew I knew, you wouldn't have done it for the wrong reasons. Knowing you were caught or might be caught wasn't a good reason not to go through with it. You had to stop it because you knew it was wrong, not because you might get caught. I understand, but I still wish. You said you loved me on the last phone call. I felt like I gave you a chance to stop before you started. I gave you a chance to make a decision. She was quiet for a moment. It was a test, and I failed it. I was such a fool. I'm not going to argue. Did you love him, Gary? He loved his wife as much as I loved you. I loved you, but we were just friends. I don't understand. Was it a crush? No, it wasn't like that. It was more platonic than anything. Gary and I were just friends. We had no desire to make our relationship anything more than that. So, how did you two end up in a motel to have sex? It's a long story. I still have an hour until Huntsville. Gary and I worked together. Over the course of almost a year, we discussed a range of topics, including sex. It became evident that neither of us had ever engaged in sexual activity with anyone other than our spouses. We weren't dissatisfied with our spouses and were content with the status quo, but we developed a curiosity about it. As our conversations progressed, our interest grew. We became more relaxed. I don't know who brought it up first, but we eventually started discussing the possibility of having sex with each other just to see what it would be like, with no strings attached. It would be a one-time deal. It was more like two adults playing doctor, or like I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's how it evolved. How it evolved. Have you ever thought about what the downside of that could be? Neither of us did. We got to the point where having sex was like going to the movies together. I don't know about Gary, but I didn't think you'd ever find out about it, so it wouldn't hurt you. I was wrong. I'm sorry. How did Gary's wife feel about it? She was going to divorce him. I went to her and explained it to her like I'm explaining it to you now. She wouldn't divorce him, but I don't think their marriage was ever the same. Gary was fired along with me, but he protested. It went to arbitration. He claimed he didn't violate company policy because we never had sex. The board of directors didn't buy it. They moved to Baltimore and I never saw them again. I told her what happened, and she didn't want to divorce him, but I don't think their marriage was ever the same after that. Gary was fired along with me, but he protested. It went to arbitration, and he said he didn't violate company policy because we never had sex. The board of directors didn't buy it, though, and they moved to Baltimore. I never saw them again. I was relieved when we arrived at the house. Our conversation was over, and things had calmed down a bit. Some of it was tough to take in. I took Janet to my room and the guest room after making sure she had everything she needed. I said goodnight, and said we'd talk more tomorrow. I hoped our next conversation would be more pleasant. Morning. She was already waiting for me for breakfast. It was the first time in a long time I didn't have to cook. So, tell me about the sex with Gary. You know there was no sex, and you also know why. I must have ruined your romantic evening. Actually, you know the situation. And although he brought wine and strawberries, it wasn't a romantic encounter. Don't make it any worse. So, did you guys do anything? Oh yeah, we answered a dozen phone calls and a dozen more knocks on the door. Some creepy guy made everyone either call us or knock on the door. The closest we got to sex was when I took off my shoes. Did you have a bad time? It was the most miserable half hour of my life while that biker was trying to sneak into the room to grab Gary. I managed to sneak out when I saw my car was gone. I was so upset I cried. That's when Nancy pulled up. You called my sister, and worst of all, you called my mother. She still won't talk to me. I'm sorry if I ruined something that was so important to you. I take full responsibility for what I did. It was wrong. Oh, don't blame me for everything. If you think you can jump 5 years from now, you're wrong, and take responsibility for everything that happened. You're crazy. It was my fault. It was my fault. Don't you ever try to take that away from me. I didn't flounder in agony all these years so you could take it from me. I feel partially responsible and I have to take some of the blame. Don't do it. When I walked into that motel room, I lost all myself. I'll never get my respect back. But at least you saved my virtue with your phone calls. I still have it, and I thank you for it every day. I wish you had a way to do something ahead of time. But now I realize why you couldn't. It's sad, John. I love you and I always have. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I'm truly sorry. I won't ask for your forgiveness because I don't feel I deserve it. Losing your love and trust has hurt me more than anything else you could have done to me. Janet, you never lost my love. I'm glad. I'm sorry to hear that, John, but what about our relationship? I'm sorry, but it's over, and I don't know how to get it back. I understand, and that's only fair. What are we doing for lunch? How about sushi? That sounds great. Are my clothes okay? We had a good time that day. After lunch, we did some more shopping to get Janet some clothes that wouldn't make her look like a nun. I even talked her into buying some lip gloss, but nothing too dramatic. We had a light dinner of soup, cheese, and crackers, and then sat at the table with a nice glass of wine. It was good to see Janet getting back to her usual self. The more time we spent talking, the calmer she felt. Are we going to have sex tonight? John, I don't know. I have some problems. What kind of problems? Do you remember when I used to fantasize about Pam Kramer, the cheerleader? You do remember that, don't you? Yeah, of course you do. And every time we had sex for the next 4 or 5 years, all I could think about was you having sex with me and thinking about Pam Kramer. I'm just joking, but it seems like you're not taking it well. I had to deal with it, and I don't understand why you can't come on. We all fantasize. Who's your dream lover? Okay, most of the time it's you, even after we broke up. What do you mean? Most of the time, who's the rest of the time? You really want to know? I promise you, Mel Gibson, you're not going to laugh. I'm not joking. I've always dreamed of having sex with Mel Gibson. I don't think there's anything abnormal about it. He's a very desirable guy. This brings up another question. Who have you fantasized about for the last 5 years when you were relieving tension? I think about you a lot. Same question for you. And the rest of the time, well, sometimes I think about you and Gary together. You're a sick one. You fantasize about Gary and I having sex for pleasure. That sucks. Not really. After your date, I wondered why you wanted to have sex with Gary. I didn't have any answers, so I assumed he was a better lover than I was. I was sure I had failed as a partner in some way. I convinced myself. I think you were seeking renewal, Chuckles. We're going to deal with this now. I'm going to take a shower, and then we're going to have sex. You can think about Pam Kramer, and I'll think about Mel Gibson. It's all taken care of. Tomorrow morning, we'll go get my stuff, and I'll move in. Can you handle it? Are we getting married? No, I can't marry a man who doesn't trust me. Maybe in a couple of years we'll talk about it again. Oh, I see you want to stay single in case another guy like Gary comes along. One more remark like that and I'll have to intervene. Head, could you please turn off the phones? I don't want to be interrupted. It only took about an hour to load her stuff into the car. Terry was right. She did get rid of almost everything. The remaining furniture she sold to the landlord for $200. When I finished loading the car, she walked over to the bakery and said she was leaving shortly. We pulled onto the highway heading south. I looked at her and we both smiled. I have one more question. It's a last one. What is it? Where'd you get the Mel Gibson post? The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thanks.